Hello and welcome. It is Thursday again. You know, time rushes so quick. Tonight, we are continuing with our conversation on Nigeria, or the end SARS saga as what it is actually becoming to. Now, I don't want to spend much of what, or to waste much of your time, as I always say, but I would like to say one thing before I introduce you to David Otto. Now you are familiar with him. He is the man who knows everything about Africa, and also he has got some guests that he brings in here. They are top notch. Of course, we are virtual distancing due to COVID-19. Now, what I wanted to say is this. If you witnessed the impact of George Floyd's death in July, when the Black Lives Matter came with full force, they shook all over the world. Now, I am just trying to say this. For those of you who are supporters of Black Lives Matter and who detest police brutality, then you should come out and stand with Nigeria. And for my fellow Africans, I want to tell you this. It is not only a Nigerian thing. Believe me, the Nigerians, what they are going through, you guys, wherever you are in Africa, you are going through it. So we have to stand together and change things around. Anyway, David Otto, what do you have for us today?
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph. I really want to appreciate the Africans in London television for this platform. Mr. Joseph, thank you for that introduction. But first of all, let me appreciate once more our guest for continuously sending us all their questions and asking us to have a dive into this topic and all other topics that they've continuously requested for. Again, this program is all about security updates within Africa to understand the trajectories of security in Africa, and for us to share our knowledge, with the experts that we bring on board, and for us to answer some of the questions, because generally, again, as we say, security has always been an issue that people always think it's all about the police have to talk about it, or the military have to talk about it. But we think because the population is at the bedrock of the social contract, it is important for the population to always understand what their role is when it comes to security, and that is why the social contract is built on two principles. That's the principle of freedom. So the state takes away some of the freedom of its citizens in order for it to provide security. But when the citizens are no longer free and they are still not secured, and the origin of that insecurity comes from a state entity instead of a non-state entity, it becomes a problem. It becomes chaotic. The trust that exists between the social contract and the people of the community deteriorates to a point where there is no longer a rule of order within the country. There is no order, there's no security, and nobody seems to have any kind of leadership any longer, because everybody becomes turns into a state of survival. And that is what we continuously talk about when we talk of police brutality. Now, the issue of police brutality, as Mr. Joseph said, has been at the forefront of global discourse, especially when it comes to the Black Lives Matter. Now, it is not that it is only Black lives that matter, but this issue of Black Lives Matter, has brought to the forefront the level at which Africans are a subject of brutality from police. It doesn't matter whether it's in Africa, it doesn't matter whether it's in Europe or in America. there has been this discourse about the way that police treat Africans. Now, it is not just about the Western police, it is also about the African police. And that's why we continuously want to look into the reasons why this is the case. And we continuously have this discussion and bring to you our guests so that, most of our guests that we bring on board, these are people, if not all, who have experience within these areas. And they can dive deep into this subject matter to ensure that you can understand it. Because the fundamental principles behind policing is that as a police officer, you're there to serve the community. You're not there to enforce, your brutality upon the community. Now, the issue with 21st century policing is that it focuses a lot on enforcement rather than service to the community. And where a police focuses on enforcement rather than service to the community, there is always a clash, because the role of the police, again, is to serve the community, is to protect the community, and it is not to brutalize the community. So let's come to the situation in Nigeria. Now, the ongoing protest, which I'm sure that a lot of you have heard about, we talked about this last week, the End SARS. Now, when we talk about the End SARS, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is the SARS unit itself, which is the Serious Anti-Robbery Squad unit. We're talking about the end of brutality by all police units, whether it's SARS, whether it's the normal police, whether it's any other police unit, or whether it's the military. The key behind this is, how do you end brutality by security services that are supposed to be protecting the community, but instead of doing that, they are maltreating the community. So let me introduce my guest, and and have this discussion alongside with Mr. Joseph Otieno, who has always been a very powerful anchor. He's also going to be contributing today because he's talked about this issue, and he has a particular passion, especially when it comes to the security of Africa, but more importantly, the behavior of Africans. When you look at that from the perspective of the police. So let me bring in Chris Samuel, who is a security and intelligence analyst. Mr. Chris has done a lot of studies on policing. He was here with us last week when we talked about the NSAS issues in Nigeria. And Mr. Chris, we've just heard a terrible situation that happened. In Lekki, which is, of course, one of the, the very, what Nigerians call posh areas. That's the Lekki toll gate, and this Lekki toll gate actually leads to the island. So you've got the mainland, which is along Lagos, and then you've got the island. Now, there was an incident. From my finding, I understand that. There's been a lot to talk about it being a massacre, that police officers or military opened fire on armed protesters, in this location. The governor of Lagos State has come up and made it very clear that there was no casualties, but that some people are currently receiving treatment in the hospital. We've seen hashtags talking about it being a massacre. The Nigerian army has denied that it actually deployed its forces to that area. And there's an ongoing investigation. So, Mr. Chris, I know that you've been following these affairs, and what we've been seeing in the streets now is an escalation. Now, do you remember the Arab Spring in 2011, where a young man was protesting, in Tunisia, and he was protesting against the corruption and the brutality of the police, and this set a very bad precedent, which left many governments wanting. It overthrew many governments in Northern Africa. Now, Nigeria is the giant of Africa. And if we're seeing this kind of trend happening in Nigeria, my belief is that if there's an earthquake in Nigeria, then you have cracks all over Africa. Is that what you think when you look at the ongoing protest, Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Dave. Yes, that's what that I think might happen. I mean, we've discussed that extensively in the past, and then we think that there are a segment of African countries that are actually looking up to Nigeria to do something because they believe their future depends on Nigeria either doing well, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or rising up to correct the wrongs of the government. So
Yeah.
the currently now, Mr. Day, what is actually happening in Nigeria is unprecedented, and I think the government and the other African country leaders should be worried. The reason why I said that is the movement that has come out in the last few days, is unprecedented in the history of Nigeria. I mean, we had riot in Nigeria in the past that probably last for maybe a day or two or three, max a week, but to have a sustained protest, by youths coming out in droves, running for almost about 2 weeks, and it doesn't seem to be ending, it's quite worrying.
Yeah.
But I would say that the government, I think, created this enabling environment for this to happen. First, I believe that maybe the disbandment of like maybe SARS was done in a rush without thinking through what that implication would mean. Because like I said to you last week, I said once that the governments have come out and said, okay, they disband SARS, you know, it's a short-term measure for them because they believe that they will score a tactical victory by just saying that, and then the protester will be displaced and maybe go home and quiet down for a while, and then the SARS will come out and will continue with their normal routine. But that hasn't been the case because once the government came out and disbanded the SARS, the other segment within the protester that believe, okay, maybe we could even ask for more, you know. So they're not talking in terms of SARS anymore now. They're now talking in terms of like maybe police reform, in its entirety. You understand? Justifully so, you understand? Because I mean, the state of Nigerian police now is such that ending of SARS will not change much. The entire policing architecture of Nigeria needs to be changed, you know. And I believe that maybe, the government needs to pay attention to that. Coming
Yeah.
to the saga, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, coming to the
Yes.
issue.
You've made a very good point, which I wanted to, uh, So according to what you're saying, and this is what I've heard from a lot of practitioners as well. They're saying that the End SARS protest, was just a slogan rather than a demand.
Mhm.
Is that what you see now, or is it being said now because the protesters
It-
are insisting on continuing to ask for more? I mean, what was it originally? Was it really End SARS, or was it just a slogan?
well, if we understand the chronological of event leading to that SARS itself, it was the movement for the revolution now started almost few days or a week before that, you know,
Mm,
and then steamroll into NSAS now because obviously when the revolution now movement was going on, it wasn't too much, but it was there. A video surfaced showing the SARS unit, one member of the unit, was the killed unarmed civilian. And then from there, the narrative changed from revolution now to end SARS now. And then, end SARS now that the government came out and disbanded the unit, the narrative changed from there now that they want police reforms. So
mm,
you understand how complex it's getting now.
mm-hmm,
So if the government comes and say, okay, the government now need to start showing serious engagement, serious the tactics on how to manage the whole crisis, not just coming out and giving it to the demand of the protester. Because if you come out tomorrow and say, oh, we're going to start police reform next week, what they will also say to you is that they want reform of the entire government and Nigerian political system because
mm,
the the reform of the political system is the key thing, not so much of the police, because the political entities are the one that make budget allowance for this the institution to be properly managed. But what has happened over the years that there have been a problem with oversight. This institution are now be properly managed, even though they do take annual budget, because there's no oversight. There's no anybody asking question, the money that was allocated to the police, what have they done with it? The money that was allocated
let
to
me
the
let me come to that point. It's good that you're talking about the you're coming towards the welfare of the police, because one of the key, I don't want to say strange demands from the SARS protesters was the welfare of the police. I mean, they were in fact saying that yes, we want to end SARS, we want to reform the police, but I mean, they made it very clear that one of the demands is for the Nigerian political elites or the government to reform the police, and we've seen that the state of the police is really deplorable. We've seen that the recruitment is quite not the way it is supposed to be. People are recruited based on ethnic or religious. I don't know if that will change. Considering the ethnic and religious composition of Nigeria. But if you talk about the training, you talk about the the accountability, you talk about the leadership of the police, the professionalism of the police. Now, these are some of the things which some of the protesters on NSAS they've been requesting, that the only way we would change the mind and behavior of the police is if we change the welfare. And you and I have seen horrible videos of the kind of welfare that the police officers get. This is an environment that is not going to produce any police officer that will not be brutal. Is this what you're also seeing from your side?
Certainly, Mr. Dave. I mean, the structure of the training that has been given to the Nigerian police recruits and the nature of the recruit itself, I mean, to be honest with you, you will not expect anything better from them. Because the environment in which they were trained, it's not an ideal environment for anybody. If you train a police officer in a prison-like environment, even worse, and then you expect them that once they finish that training, they will go out and relate better with the general public. I think we must be having a laugh, So the environment in which they were trained is not ideal for them. And then I think the only legitimacy that they do gain is that once they finish that training, they know that the only thing that they have, because it's not that maybe the salary or maybe stipends that they're being paid every month can actually do anything for them and the family. So the only legitimacy that you're giving is that they have a uniform and they have the guns. And it's the reason why they terrorize the general public. Because
Mr. Joseph,
if you
It is very interesting because in your opening statement, David, you indicated that the police is there to protect, is there not to enforce laws.
Yes.
Now, one thing that I don't understand, the police in Nigeria, say for example, in Uganda, I will come to the question because it might get a little bit longer. In Uganda, it was really worse, even though it is bad now, but it was worse in a sense that when Idi Amin was in power, he just recruited anybody, provided you wanted to be in a police force. So in Nigeria, is there a system which allows the professionals to join the police force? Because the police force, as David said, my understanding is that is actually to liaise with the community, is there to work with the community together. And that is where this point is always missed. So somebody puts on a uniform, all of a sudden they think they have power. So that is one. And where do they get this power of enforcing enforcing any resolution which they don't have even?
Yeah, I think Chris would answer the question, as well. But let me just say a bit from what I know. To your first question, yes, there is a scheme in Nigeria where graduates, were allowed to join the police, and graduates do join the police. Now again, it's not about being a graduate that makes a good police officer. As Chris said, it's about the training that you receive, the environment that you're trained in, the kind of if I want to call it ideology that you're given as a police officer. Um, you know, how your welfare is being looked after. Now, like in most African countries, joining the police is like a job that people join to make money rather than to serve the community. So once you've joined the police, it's almost like a celebration because you'll be given an opportunity to enrich yourself, or maybe protect yourself or protect your family. So it's become a culture that does not promote the ideals of what a police officer is supposed to be and supposed to do. So when you have that kind of a culture, it becomes very difficult for you to produce a different breed of police officers, ones that are there to serve the community, are there to protect the community. So you produce a set of police officers that are not just there for law enforcement, which is bad enough, but they are there to exploit and oppress the community and oppress the people that they are supposed to be protecting. So these are some of the things that needs to be looked into, and a lot of people have spoken about this, very deeply, and talked about the need for the entire police system in Africa and in Nigeria to be reformed. Because remember, they the way that most African police are being structured is the same way that you have the British system of policing. But remember that the reason why the British took, or or the other countries or Western countries took their police systems in Africa, it was not to protect Africans. It was to protect the interest of these colonial masters, to ensure that they could do things and have protection. And that is what most African countries, especially like Nigeria, have been left with. That culture that whereby a police is seen as an authority over the population rather than a servant of the population. So I don't know if Chris, it's the same. You have the same thought, or you have anything slightly different to that.
Yeah, I think I have anything different from that. I have something different from that. If you look at the way the police in this country, in the United Kingdom, the way they relate to the general public, it stems from the nature of the training that they have, and then it stems from maybe the structure and the hierarchy of the policing institution in United Kingdom. Why I say that is that even if you are an officer that have been to like maybe Cambridge or Oxford or LSE or Harvard, until recently, if you join maybe the British police force, you start from the scratch. You start learning from the best. You do Bobby on the beat, neighborhood watch, everything. You need to rise to the rank and learn basic things about policing. But the reverse is the case in Nigeria, because the best brain that will consider joining the police, all of them stay at the top in Abuja. You understand? And more often than not, in most cases, thing doesn't. Yeah, implementation policies and stuff happen at the top, at the head office. But the people that actually perform the task of policing are the police officer, everyday police officer that walk the street, that relate to the general public. Is that money, is that image that needs to change? Because they need certain kind of training to be able to maybe communicate. Communication means that you know what policing is all about. what their duty is, what their duty is, what they're supposed to be saying to the general public. More often than not, the nature of the police, every police officer that you see on the street, on the roadblock in Nigeria, they don't even know what they call peace. You understand? They don't know they don't know what they're supposed to be saying to people that are maybe more savvy than them, that are holding them to account or be able to question their authority there. So is this stem from, okay, yeah, you have educated guy joining the police, but more often than not, they will end up at the head office in Abuja. You understand? So the most fundamental aspect of the Nigerian police are like maybe the low rank officer, that it is their duty to relate to everyday people. And that once that trust is done, then the government needs to like maybe start looking at wholesale reform of the entire institution. It's not, problem with the police is not something that is only unique to Nigeria or unique to Africa. The United States, LA, Los Angeles had a similar problem in the 80s when the Cuban refugees flooded into the United States. So what they were doing at that time, because of the influx of the Cuban refugees that was coming into the United States, they lowered the standard of their recruits. You understand? But they made the judgment of error where they lowered the standard of the recruit because of the population that was coming in. And then they ended up recruiting like maybe criminals that was being freed in Havana. You understand? And most of those officers later became, they became like maybe drug dealers within the Los Angeles police force. That a unit or most of the unit that involved those officers must narrowly reform or disbanded. So it's being able to recognize that maybe there's a problem at some point, and then do something to rectify that. But for a long time, Nigerian government have overlooked those problems. They didn't realize maybe there was a problem with the police institution. So the problem with the general public now, if the general public came out, protest and make a demand that since your SARS should end, and the Nigerian government within maybe 24 hours, 48 hours agree, it means that what it meant for the government is that they are aware that they are presiding over a failed institution, but at the same time, they still manage to foster the general public.
I think that makes sense. It does demonstrate to the population that, yes, the government was aware of the failures and the atrocities of SARS, and they were just waiting for the people to rise against that. Now, you mentioned something, because Mrs. Joseph wants to ask another question, but let me ask this. You mentioned about the United States, and you mentioned the UK. Now, what somebody within the Nigerian police will be saying is, of course, the UK, they also have police brutality. They kill black people. You can see Black Lives Matter starting in America. Black people are being killed. Other people are being shot by the police. So the Americans should not be lecturing Nigeria, or the British should not be lecturing. Do you see that kind of question coming up, and how can one defend that?
I mean, like I said, the police is a very unique institution in the sense that maybe they command so much power. You understand? We call them the gatekeepers to the criminal justice system. So anybody that is the gatekeeper, wield a lot of power. But so the comparison between the Nigerian police and America, I won't compare them at all. Because, okay, yeah, they are bad apples, you understand, but they receive the best training. The officers there, they are racist, they will go out and do things that were not authorized, but, once they are caught and they are tried, their department will pay compensation. But that's not the case. That hasn't been the case in Nigeria. There has been police brutality. Anybody that have known Nigeria, had any interaction with Nigeria, will know one thing. If you spend time in Nigeria, you will know one thing, that the policing system is faulty, and then that that there's no electricity. But that's just another topic for another day. But so you will come out of Nigeria knowing that there's something fundamentally wrong with the policing structure of the country. And it has been like that for years, for a long time. And there hasn't been any government in the last 50 years that have made any effort to actually carry out wholesale reform. So you mentioned that, okay, we were colonized by the British, And then when they left with the relic of their policing system, and then we kept it without any kind of maybe reform, to even like maybe carry out reform that reflect the modern day Nigeria as an independent country. That hasn't happened.
Mm. I think, before Mr. Joseph asks the question, I think just remind me about this, because I needed to ask you about the the fact that the people are protesting against the police brutality, and the government has to deploy those same police on the streets to to quell down the protest. I mean, I've seen videos where police officers have extrajudicially shot people in the streets. I mean, I've seen that happen. And I've seen videos where people have set police officers on fire, which is completely, unacceptable in any way. I don't know how the police is going to be able to deal with this, and I mean that will come to our next discussion when Mr. Joseph asks his question. So Joseph, go ahead.
Yeah. So, this is how I see it. So imagine the police department in Nigeria is completely in chaos or in shambles. So they have to admit that. Because if they cannot admit that, that means then they don't know why they're there and why the police department is there. But the question is, who can actually fix this problem? Will there be, say, for example, the entire retraining of the Nigerian police force, or recruit new ones, or retrain those who are in the police force already? What do you think that might happen? Chris?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think the government needs to seize the opportunity, needs to seize the moment now to actually start training new officers. So seize the opportunity to also increase the number of the police. I said last week that the current number of the police doesn't reflect that the government is actually thinking about protecting property and life, which is the bedrock of the social contract that Mr. Otto mentioned when we opened this program. So a government that is very, very, very keen to actually protect life and property of its citizen, you now need to have like maybe the tools that will enable you to perform that task. The tools happen to be the police officers. So now the 300 officers, maybe the government needs to start thinking that our population is surging to almost close to about 200 million. It makes sense at this point in time to increase the number of the police, let's say now to almost about 1 million. So if we currently have about maybe 300,000 to 400,000, it means that you need to like maybe recruit. But the nature of the recruit, the caliber of the recruit that you now need to do from now on, have to be recruits that reflect the modern day Nigeria. You have to be recruits that are properly trained, and they have to be recruits that will be well paid, well catered for, so that they will not end up to be like maybe the old Nigerian police, everything that the public dreaded about the old policing system that hasn't worked for the country. So this is an opportunity for the government to reform the entire police institution and bring out new, fresh face, fresh ideas. Maybe perhaps like maybe Nigeria in diaspora that are worth like maybe Scotland Yard, Metropolitan Police, elsewhere in diaspora. All this this are the avenue that the government should like maybe look at to like maybe bringing fresh faces, fresh ideas into the Nigerian police institution.
I agree
That would be
with
the best.
I agree with Mr. Chris. Mr. Joseph, I think as Chris is saying, but in addition to what he's saying, the fish rots from the head, and if the current crisis that Nigeria is experiencing with its police, if that is going to be resolved, then it's got to start from understanding the position of the leadership and what the leadership, whether the leadership is competent to carry on with the current police structure, or whether the leadership itself needs to change. Now, we're not saying that individuals within the police structure should be changed, or we're calling on the government to sack the police. But let the police institution itself, let an independent committee be set up to really look at the effectiveness of the Nigerian police leadership, and see whether that effectiveness or that leadership that is existing at the moment is able to trickle down to the the sergeant in the street, the guy who walks the street, and I think that is where change will really begin, because the moment you don't have that change coming from the top, then it is not going to change what is happening. Because remember, these are security units, and security units they operate on the basis of order. They take orders from their superiors, and that means a police officer is not going to do anything that they know that they have to account to a leadership that is robust. So I think even before we talk about recruitment, the Nigerian police leadership has to question itself and see whether they deserve the position that they have. And if they don't deserve that position, then they should be thinking about giving that position to officers that deserve it, so you can have that change. Because when you talk of recruitment, I'm going to make this point, and then you can come, Mr. Joseph. When you talk of recruitment, I don't see Nigerians trusting to even join the police, because one of the key things about recruitment in an organization like the police is you want to attract the best amongst the best. But with the current structure, with the current repetition that the police has, with the current behaviors of the police, I don't see the police attracting the kind of people that will bring change within that institution. So you've got to take into that into consideration, Mr. Joseph. So you were going to ask something. Go ahead, Mr. Joseph.
What I was going really to ask, it's a simple question. It's an observation. Since this problem started, you haven't seen a police chief coming to address the nation. Okay, the president appeared just to disband the SARS unit. Do you really think that this police force has got that mind of actually rebuilding the police, or even does it even seem to care to take care of the communities who they're supposed to? Because until now, you haven't seen a police chief coming saying, well, look, let us calm down, everything will be okay. Why do you think that it is like that in Nigeria? Not only in Nigeria, I think in many countries in Africa.
I think one of the things which I've observed, to the credit of the Inspector General of Police, I think he made a speech once when he disbanded SARS. But that is not enough in the circumstances. And you're right. One needs to see a display of leadership, not just on the side of the IGP. Nigerians are calling for the president to say something. They are calling for other senior authorities of the government to say something. Silence doesn't work in these circumstances. And what the authorities of Nigeria, especially the Inspector General of Police, has to understand is that the mindset of the of the new generation, if I want to call it that, of the younger generation, is very different. I mean, this is a technology population, and mind you, we are talking about Nigeria here, which is the most populous country in Africa. So you've got more than 65% of a population that is under the age of 25. A very, very young population, and a population that is growing in advance in terms of the technology. These are people that young men who are researching. They know how things operate in other countries. They are seeing changes. I can tell you that throughout the world, if you talk about people that are entrepreneurial, without, you would always find Nigerians within that community. So, I think the kind of the leadership is underestimating the ability and the capacity and capabilities of Nigerians. And I think that is where the problem is coming from, whereby they think that, okay, we might just, send soldiers to the streets or send the police to the streets, and then the problem is going to be resolved, by some kind of coercion, and it's not going to work, in this century. So, to answer that question, Mr. Joseph, what I think the Inspector General of Police needs to do, what I think the government of Nigeria needs to do, is to call on this young population to say, we have listened to your demands. We want you to arrange yourself. We want you to organize yourself in various states or in various local government communities, and present your demands as to what you want in your particular localities. Each local government can be able to deal with its own local issues, so that you can decentralize the grievances, because what is happening in Lagos is seen differently from what is happening maybe in Borno State, or maybe what is happening in Edo, or in in Enugu State. So each one of the 36 states, even though everybody is crying foul and saying end SARS or end police brutality, they have their specific issues. And I think this is where a committee of the 36 states, the governors, they have to sit down with their local government chairmen, and with their local chiefs and their local clergies, or imams. They've got to sit down and have a comprehensive list of what is it that the young men in our communities want, what is really worrying them, what are some of the things that we can present to them, or they can present to us, that we can deal with. Now, if you don't do that, you would have an organization that is has no leader, as we're seeing at the moment. But the only way you can organize these young people in a way that they can bring in their demands in a very constructive manner is to go down to the local government areas. Chris, I don't know if this is what you think can be done, from your views.
Yeah, I mean, the protester already, they've already like, maybe tabled their demand. I heard that maybe is a 5-point demand for police reform is at the heart of that, and then they're also asking for compensation for the victim of the police brutality. But I think the key thing, like you said, yeah, they need to engage. But the problem too with the protester, which I understand to a certain extent from a strategic point of view, is that they don't appear to have a leadership structure. Maybe that was deliberately intended to be so for now, but on the long run, it's going to be quite challenging for anybody who wants to engage. Let's say, for example, maybe Amnesty International, maybe the United Nations, or any other NGO or foreign government that want to engage directly with the protesters. So they need to have a leadership structure in place that can put across their grievances and their demand to people that can help them, like maybe get things moving. So that would be the key way forward for now.
Yeah, but I think that, as you rightly said, experience is always the best teacher. I've seen in scenarios in Africa, specifically, I've seen that in Cameroon, where when leaders come out of this kind of protest, there is a tendency that the government will pick on them, and they would. Some of them could be arrested. Some of them could be compromised, and then you go back to a scenario where the inevitability of an arms race and armed revolution becomes the order of the day. So I totally understand the point which you're making, that actually bringing forward leaders at this point, could be counterproductive to what the NSAS revolutions wants, what they want to achieve. But the way that I think that could be circumvented is if, for example, they go down the local government route. whereby they say each local government should present, their various grievances to their local government chairman, and then that goes towards all the local governments can now assemble at the level of the state, and then present a point whereby you can have what you call nominated leaders rather than leaders that emerge. So you can nominate individuals to present the demands, because of course the 5 demands which you mentioned, these are just what I call the federal demands. These are not very specific demands from each of the 36 states. I don't know if that makes sense, Chris.
Yeah, I think the only person that has been engaging constructively with the protester, I think I must commend him, is the governor of Lagos State, because they were affected more than any other state, and I think they have more to lose than any of the major 36 states. So yeah, I think from what the governor said, they listening to him on TV, is that okay? They're engaging with people that seem to have like maybe a democratic structure in which they are trying to like maybe see which number of youth or who youth is going to be put forward to present to see with the panel or investigative panel that will be able to look into their 5 point demands. So Lagos State, I think, is the only one that I believe is actively engaging with the protesters, with the youth, and then trying to like maybe get to the bottom of what has actually went wrong in the state. I don't know if I know that state. I know that maybe on your state, they mentioned that they've been able to suppress or curtail let me say not suppress, the curtail the situation in their state, not to degenerate to the extent that we've seen in Lagos. And then I think the governor of Delta State has done something similar, because he has actually went a step ahead and imposed curfew. But to the extent by which you talk about local government, Dave, Nigerian structure doesn't work like that, because like anything else, it will be subject to be abused and be hijacked. Once you start going down to the level, or maybe let's go down to the local government, the whole point will be mixed along the line. So I think it's better than to like maybe engage with the state governor. The state governor get things done more quicker than the local government. So it has to be engagement at the state, at the state governor's level. If not the federal level. Yeah, yeah, yeah. At the state governor's level now, not the local government level. That would be the ideal way forward for now.
Now, from an intelligence point of view, Chris, there is no way that we've brainstormed on these issues before. Do you think the government saw this coming? Because there were all signs that this kind of chaos was actually being was being cooked, if I want to use that word. Do you think the government saw this coming, or was it kind of a broken biscuit, in the sense that they expected it perhaps to come from a different kind of maybe from a different kind of movement rather than the NSAS movement? You spoke about the revolution now. Was this it, or is this it? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, from the intel perspective, I was shocked when the Lagos State governor mentioned that they were not aware, but they've been getting like maybe info and Remo and intel that maybe taking place in the Lagos now is that it has been hijacked from like maybe a group that have a separatist agenda. I've explained to you before that the Southwest are actually like maybe agitated for Oduduwa Republic. You understand? So what I've also thought that maybe if the problem with the protester was not properly managed, we could see the scenario that play out in Syria, where people that now have different agenda will come into the equation. So is the issue is that okay, the whole thing has not been properly managed, but I can tell you that there will be other interests that have crept in, interests that maybe they are not really happy with the general state of things in the country, or interests that are now come to the conclusion that maybe it's better for us to separate. It's difficult to tell at this point, but and I'm surprised that the governor of Lagos State doesn't seem to even understand that scenario as well, because it's beyond everybody. But we can't rule anything out. Yeah, there's a possibility that other people that have different the equation at some point. Because once you have the masses on the road, I mean, that what else do you need? You know, you just need, yeah.
Yeah, your line is breaking a little bit, and I'm sure that it's going to be
Yes.
stable. Now, one thing which
Okay.
I think a lot of our viewers have been asking is what really happened in that Lekki toll gate. My understanding is that there was no massacre, because I know I have a very good knowledge of when the military opens fire on a crowd, if you have 10 casualties, if you have 10 people that are killed, of course you have about 30 other people that are wounded, or more. Now, that hasn't been the case, but we've seen people talking about there was a massacre, people were killed. Is this part of the propaganda, that war that is expected of this generation, or was there actually a massacre from your angle? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Dave, if their event leading to the actually like maybe the sporadic shooting or something that gave endorsement to the people that advocate that there was massacre. You understand? But the only problem that I have as well, as an analyst, is that I've not really seen the mass casualty, because I mean, okay, yeah, I've heard that maybe there's instances of cops of the people that were shot on the street were actually retrieved by the military, and they'll be taken somewhere else. We don't know what for, So for now, it's difficult for the people to actually present evidence. But the governor of Lagos State have expressed that the Amnesty International and other NGO are engaging with the people that are present at the toll gate, that have audio and photographic edits there, and to be able to present to like maybe a trusted third party, So, but having said that, the scenario leading to the shooting makes me think that there is possibility that there could have been mass shooting at the gate, because if you go there, if you send an agent before the arrival of the military to remove the CCTV from the toll gate, at some point you switch off the light, that shows that maybe there's something coming. Some people have given order at the top to either quell the resistance or not let it like maybe get to the island. Not What you have to bear in mind is that the island is the commercial art and is the key art of Lagos, or not to talk of maybe the key art of Nigeria, because that's why you have all the barons and billionaires of Nigeria. They live on the island there. So I think maybe the taking ideas from what has happened in the mainland of Lagos, and then knowing that the protesters already got into that gate, I think some people panic, and then maybe got help from the military to like maybe put a stop to it at the gate there. So if we're gonna put a stop to like maybe mass movement has already arrived at the gate, and then there's now an allegation that maybe some people were shot, I won't rule that out. I mean, I grew up in Nigeria, so I know how the military operate, and I know how the police operate. So I won't put it past them, because there were evidence that shots were fired. And I can tell you that, some people might say, oh, it was just a blank bullet. But I can tell you that, I mean, there would have been maybe live ammunition fired at that crowd just to get people away from the bridge and to discourage them from coming out. I think, if we look at what has happened today now, I think they achieved that aim to a certain extent, because Lagos State has been a bit quiet compared to like maybe last week and even early this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So
think your analysis,
the aim of the people that send the military has been achieved to a certain extent for now.
Yeah. Yeah, but when you look at the level of social media, publication that has happened, with about 95% of the people that were there having their videos and their telephones on. We are still yet to see any casualties from private mobile phones. Or is it because it was dark, or is it what, or you think is something that we're still to see in the nearest future?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, it will be part of that because, like I said, that if you set an agent beforehand to like maybe remove the CCTV and then switch off the light, so try to like maybe record in that environment to do any meaningful recording or something in that environment, in that type of dark environment is going to be very, very challenging. Bear in mind that
Yeah.
there was also shooting going on. So I mean, if you're being shot at in the dark, the next cautious thing to do is to run for your life. You wouldn't even be thinking of maybe videoing and things like that. So well, we have to wait and see. I mean, I heard that maybe the governor of Lagos said there's some video that has been collected from this toll gate that is going to review. So we have to wait for them to complete that task and then be able to conclude what actually took place at the toll gate.
Yeah, but why would the government deploy a military at the gate? When because normally for the military to to come out of the barracks, I understand, it's one of the most powerful military unit that actually came out. For the military to come out of the barracks, they need the commander in chief. I mean, who is the president, or maybe others from the headquarters. But the headquarters has
Yeah.
made it very clear that their men were not on the scene. Are they just telling their own side of the story?
I think it's about like maybe spinning now for now. They believe that they've achieved their objective. They did what they believe that they have to do. To keep the unrest under check because I think it was actually getting out of hand. So they believe that they'll deal with that and then spin. So now what you see now from now on, Mr. Davis, that they are going to the purpose of spinning the whole thing. But I think someone at some point, fearing the movement getting into the mainland, there gave an order for the military to be involved. Because if there's any major crisis, the only way to like maybe put a check to it is to actually get the military involved. So somebody gave order, and then I think it's something giving an order is something that is beyond the governors of Lagos State. The Lagos don't have any governors don't generally have any like maybe jurisdiction to give order to the military. So it will have been like maybe an order from the above, from Abuja. But I can also tell you that somebody must have asked for help in Lagos. We need help. This thing is getting to Ireland, it's going to Ikoyi, it's going to Victoria. We cannot afford to let that happen. So the military at that point came in to offer assistance. But like I said, the governor said he doesn't know, but it's just about spinning for now.
Yeah, Mr. Joseph, go ahead.
Spinning the narrative.
Earlier on, you guys mentioned that every state, they have got their own problems and their own challenges. But as we can see, the problem should be seen as equal. It's just police brutality. Do you think, is there any possibility of all these Nigerian states coming together to demonstrate against police brutality, as opposed to Lagos on its own, Abuja on its own, and those states on its own? Do you think we have got only 2 minutes, so the answer has to be quick?
So there has been a snowball effect of the mass protest that started in Lagos. So as the spread around the country, but it was still the same thing: end SARS and police brutality in most parts of the country. But it was that maybe you didn't see in the other part that have had that protest as well was the destruction of property. Destruction of property happened in Lagos because I think at some point, the police, they were using to like maybe try to control the crowd. Once you have general public and the mass movement running into thousands, you have them already on the street, then a different tactics needs to be deployed, to be able to curtail them, so that you won't see what we've witnessed in Lagos in the last few days. So at some point, they were losing control in managing the crisis in Lagos State, but that hasn't been the case in other parts of the country. where some people have taken preemptive steps to like maybe declare curfew and then the curtail people at home for now.
And I agree with Mr. Chris, but also another additional thing which we've experienced on ground is that you've had some states that are predominantly saying that we are pro-SARS. That has happened in some of the northern states. So you still see that, as Mr. Joseph said, there is, although everybody believes and everybody agrees that police brutality should end and SARS should end, some states, believe that, reforming SARS is enough rather than disbanding it. And you can see that other organizations or states, especially from the northern side, they see the movement in the southern part of Lagos and other sides as, some kind of an anti-political protest against the regime. So I think what is important is to really, be able to see the NSAS as a common problem between all Nigerians and a common problem between all Africans, rather than seeing it from the point of, okay, you guys are saying SARS should end because you want to destabilize the government of President Buhari, or because you don't want him to have a stable government, or you want to destabilize the South so that it becomes ungovernable. So I think it's important to really dismiss that kind of narrative, which is prevalent, because some people believe that everything is seen, in the lens of ethnicity, in the lens of religion, and in the lens of tribe. So I think it's important to, or political affiliation. I think it's important to really make that point, that the only way that Africa can get out of this, the only way that blacks, can become not a subject of police brutality, is to see this as police brutality is police brutality anywhere and everywhere. It doesn't matter whether you're an African in Nigeria or an African in Cameroon or any other country. It doesn't matter whether you're Igbo or Hausa or or you're Yoruba. What matters is that there is police brutality, and the only way to end that police brutality is to carry out a robust reform. And this is what I think, the message should be to Nigerians. This is what I think the message should be to Africans. This is what I think the message should be to the rest of the world, that police brutality has to stop. But the only way of stopping police brutality is if we all come together and say we are stopping police brutality. We want the reform of the police against everyone, not just that we want the reform of the police against Africans, or against Yorubas or Igbos or Hausas, or Anglophones or Francophones. So I think it's very important for us to make this point. And as the close of the project, we really want to appreciate our guest, Christopher Samuel, who is an intelligence analyst. He's always been with us. Thank you for your expert insight to these questions. We appreciate again all the questions that were sent to us by the guest, by our audience. We really want to thank you again for continuously following this program. Thank you to Africans in London Television, Mr. Joseph. Your insights and your contributions are welcome, and we really enjoy working with you all the time on this project. We'll see you again next week on Thursday, same time.
Thank you.
Okay, now you have heard the men saying that police brutality is police brutality anywhere it is. I don't know how many times we are going to repeat this. Maybe we might even make a song out of it. I am still calling you guys, supporters of Black Lives Matter and those who detest police brutality, come out and support Nigeria. Nigeria, we can't just leave it on its own. You see, we are all Africans. If you have got this color, you are an African. It doesn't matter whether you are in Canada, it doesn't matter whether you are in Australia. Believe me, these challenges that we are facing, we have been facing these problems for years. Before it was the army, now it is the police. I must end here. We will be back again next week. David Otto and Chris, thank you very much. Until
Thank
then,
you so much.
ciao.
Bye-bye.